Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have another absolutely fantastic show for you today on this Thursday morning, and I'm joined by Niall Stanage. Good morning, Niall.
Good morning, Robby. Great to be with you.
Great to be with you. It's it's the end of the week for me,
yes.
But you'll be here Friday.
I'll
with
be here for Amber. Yes,
Excellent.
always a pleasure. I hope you enjoy a leisurely weekend after your 4-day week.
We're not quite there yet. I've got quite a few other programs and projects and writing to do for the rest of the day, but I am excited to talk about the news we have going on.
Absolutely.
Epstein updates
are
always of interest to us and to our viewers.
Absolutely. Coming up on Rising, House Democrats released those bombshell emails written by deceased convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein referencing President Trump. This prompted House Republicans to release 20,000 pages of other Epstein documents.
Additionally, the FBI has arrested Gavin Newsom's former chief of staff on charges including conspiracy to commit bank and wire fraud.
And British broadcaster Piers publicly apologised to tennis star Novak Djokovic for criticising him for not getting the vaccine during the 2022 Australian Open. But first of all, let's start in our time-honoured fashion, Robby. What's on your radar?
Well, Niall, another huge win for President Trump, who calmly, rationally, and concisely explained to Fox News host Laura Ingraham why the H-1B visa program, which allows high-skilled foreign laborers to come to this country to work, is here to stay. Watch this.
H-1B visa thing will not be a big priority for your administration, because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent. When
we have plenty of talented people here.
No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles.
Trump went on to explain exactly why foreign labor is sometimes necessary.
They raided because they wanted illegal immigrants out. They had people from South Korea that made batteries all their lives. You know, making batteries are very complicated. It's not an easy thing and very dangerous. A lot of explosions, a lot of problems. They had like 500 or 600 people, early stages, to make batteries and to teach people how to do it. Well, they wanted them to get out of the country. You're going to need that, Laura. I mean, I know you and I disagree on this. You can't just say country's coming in, going to invest $10 billion to build a plant, and going to take people off an unemployment line who haven't worked in 5 years, and they're going to start making missiles. It doesn't work that way.
Undoubtedly, some members of the MAGA coalition will be upset to hear this, but guess what? Facts don't care about your feelings, and the fact of the matter is Trump is absolutely right about this. If we want to get serious about manufacturing in America and be less reliant on imports from foreign countries, then we need to build things here. And we're going to need skilled laborers to do it. That includes skilled immigrants. The Georgia factory example is very, very useful. In that case, South Korean immigrants had come here to help build a factory. Due to the quirks of immigration law, they were allowed to help advise on the project, but not do physical work regarding the project, possibly. Again, it's not totally clear. The law is actually somewhat vague and contradictory on what precisely they are allowed to do. Well, immigration authorities raided the factory and sent them back to Korea. These immigrants are not criminals. They are not spies. South Korea is our friend and ally against China. These immigrants were helping us build a factory so that we can do things in America. And we want to send them away? It's madness. Now look, I know there's some MAGA populists who will say, we can hire Americans to build things, we just need to pay them better. And to that I say, okay, sure. You know what? Why don't you try to build a factory and instead of getting the best deal you can for the raw materials and labor costs, you arbitrarily force yourself to pay more and have the process take longer. Obviously that would be idiotic, and yet it's the precise demand of this faction of MAGA. Make it slower, harder, and stupider to build things. Slower, harder, stupider. That's the mantra of protectionism, in fact. You might say, well, what if it takes longer or costs more to build it here? Isn't it better if we pay Americans rather than foreigners? The problem is you could use that logic to apply to really anything, consumer electronics, furniture, clothing, food. You want to pay a lot more for it so you can feel the moral superiority of knowing it was crafted by American hands. That's really just an evolved form of the left progressive buy local argument, which has long tried to argue that we should prefer food that is grown locally or clothing that is stitched together locally. I actually used to encounter this argument in college all the time. Guess what? The hippies of Ann Arbor were wrong then, and they're wrong now, even if they've started wearing MAGA hats, I guess. Look, even Kristi Noem, the nation's foremost authority on deportations, she understands why skilled immigration is important.
What is the administration's position on these visas?
Now, we're going to keep using our visa programs. We're just going to make sure that they have integrity, that we're actually doing the vetting of the individuals who come into this country, that they want to be here for the right reasons, that they're not supporters of terrorists and organizations that hate America. And that's what I think is so remarkable is under the Trump administration, we've sped up our process and added integrity to the visa programs, to green cards, to all of that. But also more people are becoming naturalized under this administration than ever before.
Noem is exactly right. We should vet the immigrants. We should make sure they share our values and that they want to work. If you're coming to the U.S. looking for a handout or planning to commit crimes or simping for terrorists, then our borders are closed to you. But if you want to help make America a better place and grow our economy, then welcome to the team. And the factory that the South Koreans were working on is a really clear example of, I think, where this just goes all awry in terms of the mass deportation scenario. They were brought here on visas to advise on this project, and then the technical distinction about whether you're advising other people on how to build something and then or actually assisting them in building it. I mean, come on. That's starting to get like really stupid government malfeasance. And they were wrongfully deported, and now there are delays to build that factory. I mean, like, you want to build things here, this is what it takes. And Trump said, I love when Trump just speaks the truth to people sometimes and is like, look, I'm sorry, I know you want it all to be Americans, but that's not cost efficient, so it's not how it's going to be. And I appreciate that candor from the president. So,
first of all, I appreciated the phrase, the hippies of Ann Arbor, in your radar.
My old friends.
Great band, for their earlier work. No, anyway, it's, look, I think there are two separate points on the immigration debate as it pertains to these kinds of visas. One is a debate about skills, and another is a debate about wages. I, of course, like I think most people should think that it is best for the United States or any country to draw the people with the skills that it needs to inside its borders so that those skills can be harnessed to the country's advantage. And I would argue, in fact, that one of the failings of our immigration system is that it isn't particularly overall tailored to the country's needs.
It's not.
Now, that to me is a separate issue from importing workers because they will work for lower wages. I think you like that because you think it's more market efficient. I dislike it because I think it hollows out protections for workers and tries to, or gets into a kind of race to the bottom. That's the objection I have here. I do agree that the situation in the factory in Georgia was pretty absurd. I mean, those people were openly there. It was a bit of a distinction without a difference as to what they were doing, what they were purportedly doing wrong. It doesn't seem to me they were doing anything very wrong. That was just a kind of debacle.
Right, and then people will say, but the the government of the state of Georgia gave the Hyundai money to build that factory, for the purpose of employing Americans, when the factory is running. They did not promise in the building of the factory be only American labor to do it, because that might cost 3 times or 10 times more. And I can't take seriously people who you should consciously choose to spend more when a different labor pool is available. Now, I understand your issue about wages. That to me speaks to, it certainly is unfair to American laborers if, because of the law, employers are required to pay them or treat them differently or better because of labor protections for them, and then there's this also competing pool of labor that is more efficient for the employer. Well, that's actually not fair to the American labor. So that I agree is wrong and should be gotten away with. That speaks to the need to have those people who have an illegal status have some kind of legal status so that then it's not unfair competition. They're entitled to whatever the protections are that the American workers are getting, and then you wouldn't have that inequality.
Yes.
So I'm all for that, yeah.
Right, exactly. The danger is people being essentially indentured servants.
Right, we don't want that.
That's obviously a problem.
Yeah.
In any event, more than 20,000 documents related to Jeffrey Epstein were released on Wednesday, and President Trump is named in some of them. We will be right back to talk more about that. Stay with us.
Now the news you've probably all been waiting for. Bombshell new emails reveal Jeffrey Epstein saying that, according to him, President Trump may have known about the convicted pedophiles' relationships with underage girls. They've also uncovered what some argue is a potential plan to blackmail then-candidate Trump.
House Oversight Democrats released 3 documents Wednesday that show emails between Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, as well as columnist and author Michael Wolff. Take a look. In an email with Maxwell in 2011, after his 2008 plea deal in Florida, Epstein writes, "I want you to realize that that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Unnamed victim spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned." And in a 2019 email to Wolff, Epstein wrote, quote, "Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever," presumably referring to the claim that Trump asked Epstein to resign his Mar-a-Lago club membership after their falling out. Epstein continued, "Of course he knew about the girls," as he asked Ghislaine to stop.
In response to those emails, House Republicans on the Oversight Committee released the entire 20,000-page tranche of documents and slammed their Democratic colleagues for cherry-picking, writing on X, "Why did Democrats cover up the name when the estate didn't redact it in the redacted documents provided to the committee? It's because the victim is Virginia Giuffre, and publicly she has said that she never witnessed wrongdoing by President Trump." Now, Democrats are trying to create a fake narrative to slander President Trump, and shame on them.
The third and final email released yesterday by the Democrats is from 2015. And that's between Epstein and Michael Wolff on the day of a Republican primary debate. Wolff writes, "I hear CNN planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in scrum afterwards." Epstein asks, "If you were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be?" To which Wolff, in course, responds, "I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or, if it really looks like he could win, you could save him generating a debt."
Former South Carolina lawmaker Bakari Sellers pointed out on X what many users were saying online about that email. Sellers writes, quote, "That's blackmail?" As for the White House, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told The Hill in response to the emails, quote, "These stories are nothing more than bad faith efforts to distract from President Trump's historic accomplishments, and any American with common sense sees right through this hoax and clear distraction from the government opening back up again." So, some interesting emails.
Certainly.
Now, I do, what's released, it's the victim's name is redacted. It says victim. The name was in there, not victim.
Yes.
It was redacted in a way that says victim. That is Virginia Giuffre.
According to the Republicans, yes.
Who has said quite definitively that she was not aware of any misdoings of Donald Trump. But this is interesting. What is your takeaway?
Well, I will have notes on this later, but in relation to the Virginia Giuffre thing, it is, I think, worth noting, as you say, that she apparently in her memoir only made reference to ever meeting Trump once, and there was no suggestion of nefarious behaviour on his part. I do think, and I'll go into this later in the show, he knew about the girls thing is far more damaging, because it obviously suggests an awareness on Trump's part of some sort of shady behaviour on the part of Epstein. They do or did have a long association, even if Trump subsequently fell out with him. Even the manner of that falling out, there have been at least 2 or 3 different interpretations about whether it's a real estate deal, whether it's to do with creepy behaviour. Trump comparatively recently on Air Force One told reporters it was about Epstein stealing staff from Mar-a-Lago.
Well, female spa attendant staff, right? So, I mean, knew about the girl. Again, this isn't Trump saying I knew about the girls. This is other people saying they had having a conversation in which they claimed that he did.
Well, hold on. No, the other people, one of whom is Jeffrey Epstein, right?
Well, right, but it's being treated as if it's like some confession. Trump is not a participant in these emails.
Right.
This is being insinuated about him, and also Trump's claim is that because of Jeffrey Epstein's creepy and/or stealing of women from his employment at Mar-a-Lago, that is why he was exiled. So I didn't actually see it as out of keeping with that record of
Well, I did because Trump and his defenders, including Caroline Leavitt, have said that Trump had no awareness of Epstein's crimes or of Epstein's predatory behavior. It's like, oh, there was something creepy, Leavitt says. Trump makes this other argument about employment. And so I didn't really, I mean, I do think it's very, very damaging for Trump. And I think it goes to the point of there being this pattern of his prior closeness with Epstein and some of the other things that we'll get into in a second. I know we both have quite strong feelings about the Michael Wolff element of this, because that...
I don't see how that's not blackmail.
I mean, it's very close to it, certainly. It's saying you could decide to do certain things in order to basically have something on Trump that you could then threaten to use against him. I mean,
right, Michael Wolff is a author and so-called journalist who's just aiding in a scheme by a source. I guess he would probably say was trying to maintain some relationship with Jeffrey Epstein so that he can get further reporting out of him on these matters. But it is unethical as a journalist to aid in someone or advise someone to do something of this nature, which comes close to being illegal anyway. It's really damning.
No, I mean, that's right. You know, every journalist, I think, has been in the position of trying to encourage a source to say more. In fact, different topic, but when the Access Hollywood tape came out, Billy Bush's defense was that he was sort of going along with it to try to, keep Trump talking, essentially. But that is very different from what Wolff appears to have done here, which is say you could manipulate this to have ammunition against Trump, which you could
that's calculated and thought out. It's very different to Billy, but in the moment is trying to keep him talking and has to react to what he's saying. Wolff thought through this email and then sent it to him, saying, "Here's how you could benefit from Trump being involved," and like if he says this specific thing, then you'll have him. Almost thinking the way like the police do in interrogations, where if we get him to say this, we know now they've perjured themselves and we have some kind of advantage. Very, very bad.
And the suggestion that Epstein could use it later. It's a very peculiar one.
Yeah. Next up, Gavin Newsom's former chief of staff has been arrested. Coming up, a look at the charges against Dana Williamson and what Newsom's team is saying. Don't go anywhere. The FBI arrested California Governor Gavin Newsom's former chief of staff, Dana Williamson, at around 10 a.m. yesterday morning. A federal grand jury charged Williamson with 23 counts, including bank fraud, conspiracy to commit wire and bank fraud, and also conspiracy to defraud the United States and obstruct justice.
The former Newsom aide pleaded not guilty on Wednesday and was released on a $500,000 bond. The indictment alleges that Williamson, alongside former Health Secretary Javier Becerra's chief of staff, built a plan to siphon money from a dormant state campaign account belonging to Becerra.
Per the indictment, the reason for siphoning that money from the account was to pad McCluskey's salary. Williamson is also accused of illegally writing off $1 million in business deductions for things like private jet travel, luxury handbags, jewelry, and vacations in Mexico. There are 4 other co-conspirators listed in the indictment.
A spokesman for Newsom said on Wednesday, quote, "Ms. Williamson no longer serves in this administration. While we are still learning details of the allegations, the governor expects all public servants to uphold the highest standards of integrity. At a time when the president is openly calling for his attorney general to investigate his political enemies, it is especially important to honour the American principle of being innocent until proven guilty in a court of law by a jury of one's peers." Williamson's lawyer criticised the U.S. Attorney's Office for arresting her with no warning and accused them of grandstanding. Her lawyer, McGregor Scott, told the New York Times, "The only conclusion I can draw is this is the latest misstep taken down the wrong road by the Trump Justice Department."
The U.S. Attorney's Office hit back, saying in part, quote, "As a matter of course, both for the safety of officers and for the preservation of evidence, this office does not inform defense counsel prior to the execution of a search warrant." The U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of California, Eric Grant, said that the investigation started 3 years ago when President Biden was in office, which is, I think, very relevant information. They often execute searches at inconvenient times for the searched party. Sometimes
that's kind of the point.
Sometimes in the middle of the 10 a.m. isn't even that. That's not bad at all.
Not in the middle of the night.
No, they often do it in the middle of the night, and it's disorienting for people. It doesn't seem like there's anything out of the surprising to me here. Obviously, presumption of innocence is important, but those aren't really particularly procedural criminal issues. That's fraud and corruption, using public money to buy handbags and take trips to Mexico. That's some pretty basic stuff, and maybe they're innocent of it and they'll be able to prove that, but it doesn't seem like something that wouldn't have been charged except for Trump's sense of political vengeance. Am I wrong?
No, I don't think you are wrong. This is one of those ones where when I first saw the headline on social media or whatever, I was immediately suspicious. It's like, oh, they're like attacking, or they're after Newsom, somebody who works for Newsom. Reading the details of it, it doesn't seem like that's the case, quite frankly. There are, as we kind of alluded to in the introduction, 2 other people related to this case who have, I think they've agreed to plead guilty. They haven't actually entered the plea yet, but have agreed to plead guilty. As we did note, this began during the Biden administration, the investigation. The argument is...
Kamala orchestrated it then. The conspiracy runs deeper, my friend.
California infighting among Democrats is the cause of it all. But no, this does seem like there are allegations of the kind of campaign money related corruption that crops up in politics quite often. Of course, the woman in question is entitled to the presumption of innocence, entitled to her day in court. I feel we say that about, as we should, about every case that we talk about here. It is not proof of guilt to be accused of something, but I don't see anything malevolent in the charging of those crimes. I don't really see anything dodgy or shady about it.
Do always want to proceed carefully because campaign finance is complicated and people can violate those laws, and, well, they violated the law without it being willful or particularly important, but when it's handbags and vacations, it's just very obvious things that you can't take public money to do. So again, now they're presenting the strongest case, as they, with the indictment is the prosecution's argument, and the defense gets to make their argument, but I'm not my hair is not on fire.
No, and
Nor is yours.
No, that never happens in my case. You're much more likely in yours. You're much more greater danger.
I am covered in hairspray, so
there you go. Always precarious. No, look, I mean, there are complicated campaign finance laws. As you say, this does not appear that complicated a case. The defendant will have the right to defend herself. We'll see how that all goes. Meanwhile, pressure is building on President Trump over the Epstein files. I will be delivering my notes to that next, so please do stick around for that.
All right, Niall, what's in your notes today?
Well, we're back on the Jeffrey Epstein matter, where Donald Trump had the worst day he's had for a long time yesterday. And the reason can be summed up in 7 words. Of course, he knew about the girls. Those words, as virtually everyone now knows, came in an email written by Jeffrey Epstein to author Michael Wolff in 2019. So let's be clear what we have here. A notorious sexual predator whose actions caused enormous trauma and misery, saying that the President of the United States, of course, knew about the girls. This new message comes on top of details we already know that seem to point towards something just not right, something shady or even creepy in the Trump-Epstein relationship, like Trump's words from an old magazine profile of Epstein. The future president said, quote, "He's a lot of fun to be with. It's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side." Or part of the message bearing Trump's signature in the now infamous birthday book prepared for Epstein's 50th. Quote, "A pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret." Trump denies writing that message, okay, but still, for Trump, when it comes to Epstein, the personal is for sure political, and these new emails are a major political problem. They add to the public clamour that already exists for a release of the full Epstein files. Congress has the power to make that happen. A handful of Republicans have joined the effort. The push is spearheaded by Republican Thomas Massie and Democrat Ro Khanna. The other three Republican signatories to that push deserve a lot of credit, in part because even 6 months ago, nobody would have named these people as the GOP members most likely to stand up to Trump. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert. Good for them. The White House is trying and failing yet again to move past the issue. Yesterday, I was at the White House for the media briefing, where Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt argued the release of the new emails was a, quote, distraction. Leavitt was also pressed for details about a quite extraordinary meeting that also took place yesterday. Boebert was apparently summoned to the White House Situation Room for a meeting that included Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel. Here's Leavitt being questioned about that by Mary Bruce of ABC News.
Given your interest in transparency, Caroline, why are White House officials then meeting with Representative Boebert in an effort to try and get her to not sign this petition calling for the release of the files?
Doesn't it show transparency that members of the Trump administration are willing to brief members of Congress whenever they please? Doesn't that show our level of transparency? Doesn't that show the level of transparency when we are willing to sit down with members of Congress and address their concerns? That's a defining factor of transparency.
No, in fact, it isn't. It's not a defining factor of transparency to bring a member of Congress to the Situation Room so you can turn the screws on her, hoping she will back away from supporting a release of the Epstein files. It's the reverse. It's ominous evidence about just how worried Team Trump is. There is something deeply odd and troubling about all of this. Boebert, to her credit, didn't take her name off the petition, despite the White House pressure campaign. Here's Massie talking about that with CNN's Caitlin Collins last night.
Wait, I got to give credit to Lauren Boebert to walk into the White House, the center of power, the free world, really, and to sustain that and to come back out and to be solid, and also to Nancy Mace and Marjorie Taylor Greene. There was all the speculation that they might take their names off, and they never did. So it's not a hoax. It's not a moot point. It is a very serious thing. There are 1,000 victims, and there are survivors who have had a press conference with Ro Khanna and I, and that's what we're fighting for, justice for them.
By the way, Massie's reference there to a moot point is alluding to a comment from the Republican Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Johnson contends that a full House vote would be irrelevant because of work already being done by a particular committee. Here's Caitlin Collins asking Massie about that.
Since he's the Republican House Speaker, he's calling it totally pointless exercise and completely moot. What do you make of his comments? Do you agree with those?
Well, the White House spent a lot of effort in the midst of a shutdown to stop a totally pointless exercise that's completely mute.
Indeed it did. Concern about Trump's relationship with Epstein is not by any stretch confined to liberals or Trump critics. Last month, a new poll from Marist College found 77% of Americans believe all the Epstein files should be released. Trump is resisting every step of the way, but the pressure is building. There will be a full House vote on the matter. That's not only because of the resoluteness shown by those 4 Republicans. It's also because yesterday, finally, Adelita Grijalva was sworn in as the Congresswoman representing Arizona's 7th District. Grijalva was elected a full 7 weeks ago. The delay in swearing her in is believed to be the longest in the entire history of Congress. And the suspicion is that Johnson was delaying because he knew Grijalva would be the vote that would put Massie's petition over the finish line. But she's here now, and here's part of her speech to the chamber yesterday.
Because that's what the American people expect us to do. Fight for them. That is why I will sign the discharge petition right now to release the Epstein files. Justice cannot wait another day.
Sadly, justice will probably have to wait quite a few more days, but it does seem to be coming one way or another, and Donald Trump seems to be very, very worried about that.
Well, I think the answer is to do what, yes, Massie and Ro Khanna and others want to do, which is just release all the files, and Trump should stop blocking that, and Mike Johnson should stop aiding him in that effort. It's what the American people want. It's what, if not Trump personally, many other Republican leaders, including J.D. Vance, promised would happen, and it needs to take place. And these selective releases aren't doing anyone any favors, not doing Trump any favors, because we might learn something if we saw all the documents. That email, I frankly don't know how damaging it is, in my view, because I sort of believe or guessed already that Trump had some concern about Jeffrey Epstein's behavior. Also, that's an email from a time where Jeffrey Epstein has already been gone to prison for sex-related crimes with minors. So Trump knows and everyone knows. The question is, did he know before or at the time?
Right, but Epstein's clearly suggesting that he did know something at the time.
I don't know that he's clearly suggesting that, but that's not my interpretation.
Well, if he knew about the girls and asked Ghislaine to stop, that would surely refer to a time whenever he knew Ghislaine Maxwell was doing something to furnish girls for Epstein, would it not?
I think it suggests a knowledge that Jeffrey Epstein was being creepy around the girls at Mar-a-Lago, an issue that Trump dealt with by having him thrown out of the club. So I don't know that it goes beyond that. And I will again point out that Virginia Giuffre, who's the victim mentioned there, says that Trump didn't do anything wrong.
I think that the point, though, is Trump's extremely aggressive attempt to prevent disclosure obviously fuels the suspicion that disclosure would be more damaging to him.
Yeah, that I agree with, which is why we should just, doesn't matter if it's damaging or not, we just got to see all of it at this point. Something we didn't mention in our discussion of these emails earlier is that another figure who didn't come out looking very well is this former New York Times reporter.
Landon Thomas.
Yes,
right?
who also looked like he was advising, that he was warning Epstein about some inquiry into Ken Starr that would look bad for him or something. That was weird too.
It was weird. That was, I think, hazier than the Michael Wolff example we were talking earlier, but it did look, it was just an odd one. There are lots of emails, not all of them related to Trump at all or anyone else, that are kind of, it's harder to fill in the gaps as to exactly what is meant by them. And there's also like much mockery of Larry Summers, which I don't mind people mocking Larry Summers, but that's a whole other thing.
The way all these people communicate is also just kind of odd to me, or maybe that's just old people or something, because the emails are short, sometimes one word, lowercase. They email the way I think I would text maybe, but I think even my texts are a little bit more polished than that. I don't know. Young people, I think, use more polished language in texts and even emails than I don't know, that stuck out to me. It's neither here nor there. It was just odd in the literal cadence of his communications to me.
It's the very rich are liberated from the rules of grammar or any sensible kind of emailing, I think.
All propriety has been thrown out, indeed.
Exactly.
Up next, John F. Kennedy's grandson, Jack Schlossberg, is running for Congress, and he had harsh words for his cousin, RFK Jr. Stay with us.
Caged one and put it in his cabinet, a rabid dog in his cabinet. Put a collar on my cousin, RFK Jr., and has him there barking. I mean, when he's not making infomercials for Steak and Shake and Coca-Cola, he's spreading misinformation and lies that are leading to deaths around the country. There's a measles outbreak in America right now, higher than it's been in 40 years as a direct result of what he has done.
Jack Schlossberg, the grandson of former President John F. Kennedy, slamming his cousin, RFK Jr., over his policies as Secretary of Health and Human Services. There's a little bit more of what he had to say.
I don't think there's anything anyone can do to change what JFK, my grandparents, my mom, my Uncle John stood for. Nobody's that powerful. But RFK Jr. is a dangerous person who has making life and death decisions as Secretary of Health and Human Services. And you don't just have to take my word for it. Now we have an actual record to go on. He has cut a quarter of the people who work in his agency. He fired all the vaccine experts on the panel and replaced them with anti-vaxxers. He's cutting funding for life-saving research, cancer patients, giving them their last hope.
Schlossberg making those comments as he has announced that he plans to run for Congress in New York.
He joins an already crowded primary of Democrats looking to fill Jerry Nadler's seat after Nadler announced in early September that he would not seek re-election next year. But Schlossberg doesn't just have harsh words for his cousin. He's also made a name for himself in recent years as a vocal critic of Trump and seems to have made that criticism a cornerstone of his campaign. Take a listen.
The president has made almost $1 billion this year. He's picking winners and losers from inside the Oval Office. It's cronyism, not capitalism. And a constitutional crisis with one dangerous man in control of all three branches of government. We deserve better, and we can do better. And it starts with the Democratic Party winning back control of the House of Representatives. With control of Congress, there's nothing we can't do. Without it, we're helpless to a third term.
Schlossberg is also known for going on rants and delivering hot takes on social media. And he also spoke at the 2024 Democratic Convention in support of Kamala Harris. What do you make of all this, Robby? Big fan of Josh Schlossberg, I imagine?
I am not. He deleted his social media accounts earlier this year and posted like a cryptic, "I'm sorry everyone and I'm going away now." It was almost like a concerning cry for help type message. So I don't know how it speaks to a kind of instability that I don't know makes him totally fit for running for Congress. But maybe our Congress is staffed with unstable people. I can name a few of them.
Both parties,
I don't want to be
both sides are at it.
Charged with defamatory, but I have a certain woman in mind. We'll just let that go. Look, he has every right, I guess, to speak up about whatever he hates. RFK Jr. If it were maybe a cousin isn't that close a relation. If it was a close member of my family, I would just not say anything because I think it's a little dishonorable to go after your family in that way. But the Kennedys are political people and they love running for office. And I don't think being a member of the Kennedy family and being passably good looking is enough of a resume to run for office. But good luck to him, I guess.
Certainly a number of ladies of my acquaintance enjoy his good looks, so maybe that'll be a big advantage to him. Look, I am not a big fan of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., as you know, and I'm very critical of various things that he has done. And I do think that the thing Schlossberg noted there about the panel of experts pertaining to vaccines is an important point to raise, and one where I would agree with him more than his cousin, the health secretary. That being said, I can't really sit in this seat criticising Trump for the various forms of inflammatory language he uses and say it's great for Schlossberg to describe RFK Jr. as a rabid dog.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that that's very helpful language or very useful language to use, certainly not about a member of your family, but also about anyone who you disagree with politically. That seems excessive. The other broader point about the Kennedys, first of all, despite my Irishness, I've never quite been bowled over. I mean, I like the original RFK, like the current health secretary's father, and obviously John Kennedy, that speaks for itself. But the continued sort of dynastic power of the Kennedys, I'm not a huge, I just don't really like that. I don't like it either in the cases of the Bushes or the Clintons.
Same. And I thought that fever was kind of breaking, but the Kennedys are coming back into prominence in some way.
Right, because at one time a few years ago, didn't they not have anybody in elected office for the first time, like ever? And now Mr. Schlossberg is trying to correct that, I guess.
I mean, they're a family. For a while, they were the closest thing we had to a royal family, and they were beset with tragedies much like the royal family of England.
Yep.
That was compelling from a storytelling standpoint and a sympathy building standpoint. A lot of really awful things have happened to this family. It is noteworthy. It's unlikely and unusual how many tragedies they've endured, from JFK and RFK both being assassinated, dying tragically, other accidents that have plagued members of the family.
Chappaquiddick and all that.
Right, that. So I get why people find them compelling. There was I think, smoothing over of JFK because he was killed and assassinated. It was so shocking and so vile. There was then a almost deification of him, someone who was, I think, a very flawed, like morally a human being. His governance as leader of the country, I don't think was particularly appalling or necessarily particularly great. It was fine, but he was a more flawed man personally than the kind of lionizing of him there's been on. That's neither here nor there for whether his descendants should run for Congress or not. They're certainly entitled to do so if they feel so motivated. Right. But it's really that's the only thing that they have to say.
I agree that there is a sort of celebrity fascination with them. Yeah. And this is based just on my own gut instinct, I'm not sure that they have as much political influence as they're said to have. Like, I remember back in, I guess, 2008, there was a whole big deal because the now deceased Ted Kennedy came out and endorsed Obama over Hillary Clinton in the Democratic primary. And there was this like, oh, it's a huge thing. I certainly don't think that was a defining or pivotal factor. Ted Kennedy was entitled to do it if he wanted to. It helped Obama, but it's not this sort of thing that, a Kennedy has decided this, so therefore Democrats will all just
it's definitely a boomer generation thing, right? The revering of the Kennedys predates you and I, and it is probably no longer a significant part of American politics. There are probably a lot of people who don't even know. If you're just a casual follower of politics, you don't even know who the Kennedys are. Or actually, if you know who the Kennedys are, you probably know from RFK Jr. is probably the figure who you associate with that name brand.
Absolutely. And in this case, in Schlossberg's case, I think there are about a dozen people in this primary, so it'll be quite interesting.
Yeah, is there any?
I don't think there's
he could win. He could win.
He could win. I guess because of his
crowded primary,
social media celebrity. But
although he doesn't actually have the literal last name Kennedy.
No, he doesn't.
Remind people that
he should change it. Put it on the back. Schlossberg Kennedy should be on the back.
And there's all these people named Kennedy in our politics who are actually not even related to the family. Right? The Senator Kennedy is not related to the Kennedys, and we had a Supreme Court justice who was also not related to the Kennedys.
Right. So
just a popular name in American politics.
Don't know where to go with it. A less popular name is Novak Djokovic, but Piers Morgan is offering an apology to the tennis legend who refused the COVID vaccine. More on that next.
British broadcaster Piers Morgan apologized to tennis superstar Novak Djokovic during an interview on Tuesday.
Morgan had criticised the athlete in 2022 after he refused to get the COVID vaccine that was required to play in that year's Australian Open. Let's watch.
I'm going to start by making an apology, and it's for this, is I was very censorious about you over the COVID scandal that you got caught up in. I was actually quite censorious about a lot of people at the time, and I've since apologised to some people for being too tough on them, because once it became clear that if you had the vaccine it made no difference to whether you could then transmit the virus, clearly at that point for me it becomes a personal choice.
Morgan said that the issue felt personal to him because he knew several people who had suffered from COVID-19, but he admitted he was too censorious. Here was Djokovic's response.
Thank you so much. It was difficult times and state of emergency globally. I was never a proponent of anti-vax or pro-vax. I was always freedom of choice. So, and that was misinterpreted. I was proclaimed to be, one side or the other side or so forth. It's either black or white. And I said, it doesn't need to be that way.
Back in 2022, Morgan had written on X, breaking, COVID rule cheat, immigration form liar, and anti-vaxxer icon Novak Djokovic loses final appeal against deportation and will be thrown out of Australia without being able to compete in the Australian Open. Good.
The time Australia had a requirement that anyone entering the country had to be vaccinated or given a valid medical exemption. Djokovic got stopped at the airport for failing to produce evidence of either and was held in hotel detention. I do remember that. It was outrageous. I'm glad to see Piers Morgan apologizing. I like Piers Morgan a great deal. I like him more and more over time. I didn't like him at all maybe 10 or 15 years ago. I think his changing view on this reflects my own. I, at the same time, was never for vaccine mandates, but I was a little like, come on, you're not going to do it. But, as the science about how well it stops public spread changed, I think the calculus for how justified they were changed as well. But I know you feel differently.
Well, I do feel differently. I feel differently also because One of my closest friends is a former professional tennis player, and our main point of difference is she's a huge Djokovic fan, and I just don't like him as a player. I find him kind of irritating and a bit boring. But I am also much more pro-mandate, as you know, than you are. And I don't think actually, trying to set aside my general dislike of Djokovic, I don't think it is exculpatory that the evidence has developed and changed. The point is that Australia had decided that those were the rules at that time. They based that upon the scientific knowledge that they had at that time, and they said, okay, this is what the situation is. Djokovic then took it upon himself to not bother doing any of that, still trying to get into the country in contravention of the rules. The Australians, in my judgment, were right to do what they did and say, no, those are the rules for everyone. If you're a famous or wealthy or celebrated tennis player, you don't get an exemption from the rules on that basis. So that's just tough. Now, I mean, whatever Piers Morgan said about the matter or not, that's a slightly different point. I go back and forth on Piers Morgan. Sometimes I think he's very good. Other times I'm not a fan.
I think that especially for high performance athletes who are so careful about what they put in their bodies at all. I mean, they put themselves through or deprive themselves of things or give themselves the diets, the exercise regimens that are so different from the rest of us at the highest level.
Yep.
I mean, I talked to a friend of mine who runs like 100-mile races. That's his career. He runs 100-mile races. Can you imagine running 100 miles at once?
Ultra
over and right. I remember talking to him about the COVID vaccine, and he was just like, he doesn't stick himself with needles of things in general, just because he's very in touch with his body, and like what it needs is different than to operate at that level of peak physical.
I actually do take that point about elite athletes. My issue was if Djokovic felt that way, he simply should have withdrawn from the Australian Open and not played.
Fair enough. Well, that does it for us today on Rising Live. Thanks so much for tuning in, and look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way later today. And also be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hills YouTube channel so that you never miss any content. And, of course, for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere that you can listen to podcasts. And Niall will be back here tomorrow with Amber. I will see you all next week.